What's happening, everybody, and welcome to this special live edition of Syracuse Sports presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. My name is Brent Axe. It is great to have you here. And unlike what we just saw on 7 p.m. in Brooklyn, I'm not going to make you wait 27 minutes for the news. Kiyan Anthony is coming to Syracuse after a long recruitment where Syracuse, USC, Auburn, it was a 10 schools at one point. Syracuse was one of the first in on Carmelo Anthony's son. You kind of felt like all along that Syracuse was the right place for Kiyan Anthony, and it is. He makes it official, announcing it on Carmelo Anthony's podcast tonight called 7 p.m. in Brooklyn. So the Anthony legacy will continue at Syracuse. I don't think you need me to remind you who Carmelo Anthony is, but of course, 2003 national champion. The practice facility at Syracuse dots his name, the Carmelo K. Anthony Center, future Hall of Famer, one of the best international basketball players of all time. Yeah, you know Carmelo Anthony and what he did at Syracuse in 2003, which still reverberates to this day, not only in Syracuse, New York, but everywhere in Orange Nation. So yeah, we're feeling a little bit older if you're somebody who went through that 2003 national championship experience. His son commits to Syracuse and all that comes with that. So we're going to have a little live reaction to that. Thank you for watching us. If you are live here on Syracuse Sports, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify and Apple as well. So you can listen whenever you want on demand. Make sure you follow and like and subscribe. So whenever a new episode of Syracuse Sports pops up, you will have it. You can watch live if we're live or listen or watch on your time. So there's four things that really stand out to me about Kiyan Anthony's commitment here to Syracuse. One is this: vibes. His commitment brings major vibes to Syracuse basketball. Like, the news cycle goes so fast these days. Something's going to come along in 10 minutes and wipe this off the board. But for the moment, Syracuse basketball and the son of Carmelo Anthony committing to Syracuse is the talk of the basketball world, right? He is a consensus top 40 recruit in the class of 2025. USC, Syracuse, Auburn, whoever was getting Kiyan Anthony next year is getting one of the top 40 recruits in the country. Now, it's interesting, as we're going to go over here shortly, there's a recruit coming in with him next year who is actually higher rated than Kiyan Anthony is right now, which is amazing to think about. So as much as he is a talented player, there are better players in the class of 2025, but it shores up that class, as we'll get into, and a really respected basketball opinion that I got on Kiyan Anthony a little earlier that we'll play back for you coming up, as we spoke to somebody previously on Syracuse Sports about that. But the vibes that this brings, it's excitement, right? This podcast, there's hundreds of people waiting for it to start. It starts. There was about 9,000 people when I turned it off a few minutes ago to come on and do this podcast here, and the interest that's there. He has his own podcast series as well. So Carmelo has 7 p.m. in Brooklyn. Kiyan has his own series with Overtime, which is a basketball media entity. Every time he does an episode of his podcast, or it's kind of like almost like a mini documentary, kind of documenting his life through high school and AAU and everything as he goes into his senior year, it gets hundreds of thousands of views. I mean, this kid is a star already. Not only is he a highly touted basketball player, he comes from a family, obviously from Carmelo, but Lala Anthony, who's an actress, reality TV star, she is a known commodity as well. So it was interesting, the choice between Syracuse, New York, right, and USC, Hollywood, and all that would come with that, and thinking about what kind of legacy you want to pursue. You are walking into now one of the great shadows that will hang over any recruit to come in the history of the program, and now one of the most anticipated recruits in the history of the program, right? You go to USC, you're a known commodity in basketball world, but in Los Angeles, you're just another kid, right? And you would be able to forge your own legacy, maybe out of he's still certainly in a bright spotlight given who his parents are, but maybe not quite the intense pressure here in Syracuse. Let's be honest, Syracuse basketball is looking to get back to those days when they could expect to go to the Final Four and compete for a national championship. This is a program that has not been ranked in the Associated Press top 25 since December of 2018 and has not made the NCAA tournament in 3 years, right? So in order to get back there with Adrian Autry in his second year as head coach, you've got to bring in talent. So Kiyan Anthony is more than talent. He is a star, and he brings major vibes to the program. Look, Donnie Freeman, who was a freshman on this year's team, was the highest rated recruit that Syracuse has had since Carmelo Anthony. I mentioned Sadiq White, who we're going to get into a little bit more here shortly. He comes in next year, a higher rated player than Kiyan Anthony is. So you've got talent. It's not that Adrian Autry hasn't brought in talent. And of course, the transfer portal is sitting there. Syracuse has 4 new faces on the team this year that came out of the portal. You can always strike gold there. The football team actually has made the biggest splash in the portal thus far with Kyle McCord, but the portal's always there, right? And that's what's cool about the vibes of this. It's old school. It's new school in all the ways of new media and name, image, and likeness and everything that Kiyan Anthony is going to walk into here at Syracuse, right? But it's old school in that this is a recruit that you pursued from day one, were heavily involved in, went to all the practices, all the tournaments, the home visits, right? You felt like you had an edge with Carmelo Anthony being his dad, but you never wanted to take that for granted, right? So to get this excitement and this surge from a recruit commitment, I like that even in 2024 with the importance of the transfer portal, that this is a good old-fashioned recruiting story that has committed to Syracuse. So I love the vibes of this. The second thing is it is a beacon over the hill. And here's what I mean by this. No matter how this season goes, and we are just scratching the surface of the 2024-25 season, right? But no matter how it goes, you have this class next year to look forward to. I think we do this a little too much in sports, in life, in entertainment. It's like, okay, what's next? You're always looking down the road, over the hill. What's next? You see a great show? What's next? You see a movie? What's next? In sports, too. Who's that next class? Recruiting is a process that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year, and always looking for that next guy, right? But I think it's important in this case because it's early, and I'm not making any determinations in ink here, but this is a Syracuse basketball team that's under a lot of pressure this year. They need to get back to the tournament, as I just said a few moments ago. They have not been in the NCAA tournament in 3 years. And counting, 3 seasons and counting. That is an eternity by Syracuse basketball standards. They have not been in the poll since December of 2018. Syracuse needs the vibes, as we brought up a moment ago here. They need some wins in the recruiting world, and they need to show those top recruits out there and the transfers, frankly, that Syracuse is still a destination. So Kiyan Anthony making that commitment shows it's still a destination, and some will say, oh, yeah, his dad went there and he had that emotional connection, and you kind of have to overcome that in a way, but you'll take every advantage you can get. With Kiyan Anthony, with Sadiq White, with Luke Fennell, and Aaron Womack, you have a class with Anthony's addition that was top 15, top 20, depending on which service you go by, 247, On 3, all the ESPN, all the recruiting services out there. The addition of Anthony is now, if not a top 10 class, it'll be knocking on the door of a top 10 class. So no matter how this season goes, and Syracuse fans will follow it as passionately as ever, if things do go sideways, if this team's defense does not improve, and for whatever reason, this Syracuse team does not gel, does not mold, and does not get over the hump it needs to get back in the NCAA tournament, you have the beacon over the hill. You have the class of 2025 to look forward to with Anthony, with White. And look, we'll see what Luke Fennell and Aaron Womack turn into. They're kind of under the radar prospects. Luke Fennell came from Australia, and Womack was kind of an underrated guy that they're trying to kind of lift up here. But Anthony and White are as big as it gets. They are as hyped as it gets. They are on all the recruiting services. They're names you know and can really forge a connection. And much like, I'll tell you what, Sadiq reminds me of Hakeem Warwick. You know, think of Hakeem Warwick and his importance in that 2003 national championship game and the connection that he had with Carmelo when he was here. Sadiq and Kiyan Anthony could be kind of the same connection starting next year. So that beacon over the hill is important. No matter what happens this year with this team, we're looking ahead to 2025 with good vibes, right? The third thing, what kind of player is he? Well, here we are 10 minutes into this conversation. It's like, okay, but can he ball, right? What kind of player is Kiyan Anthony. I had Paul Biancardi on this very podcast a short time ago here. He is ESPN's recruiting director and has watched him at tournaments. He's talked to him. He has covered him and knows recruiting as well as anybody in the country. So I want to play a clip from a previous episode of Syracuse Sports where Paul, see, in this clip we're going to play, he not only talks about Kiyan Anthony, he talks about Sadiq White, who we brought up a moment ago, and the connection they're going to forge there. So I wanted to leave that part in the conversation because I think it's relative and it's relevant that they're going to be together starting next year and what kind of players they can be together. So I want to play you this clip here. This is Paul Biancardi right here on Syracuse Sports a short time ago on Kiyan Anthony and a little bit of Sadiq White as well.
Yeah, he's really come on as a scorer. You know, like most freshmen, he's getting his feet wet in the game. He's overwhelmed physically and from a basketball IQ standpoint. He told me on the phone one time that, you know, his dad really has worked with him with the footwork, and you can see it now as a rising senior for Kiyan. Scores the ball at will, okay? Now, his shot quality at times, you know, sometimes you question, like, boy, was that a good shot? Some of them go in, some of them don't. It's the same thing for a lot of high school kids. They have the ultimate green light. They'll have to dial down the shot quality as he gets older, but his ability to put big points on the board is outstanding. I mean, he's top 40 on my board. I mean, you're talking about 100,000 seniors this year. I mean, to be in the top 100 is really elite. Now you're inside the top 50. He can really score off the bounce, to the rack. Free throw shooter, very good catch and shoot guy. He's got that mentality. And what I love about him, he's got the confidence right now. Like, he really believes he can score every single time. I expect him to have a really big senior year.
Paul, what are the traits of Kiyan that remind you of Carmelo maybe as a player? I guess there's some things inevitably that would kind of seep down into his game.
Well, what he's learned from his dad is the footwork. So I've noticed an increase in his ability to jab step, to shot fake, you know, to put it on the deck and be efficient with his feet. That's so important for guys that can score the ball. And his dad, one of the best ever in terms of footwork and jab step and being in that triple threat position, number one. Number two, I see the confidence. I see the confidence like his dad had at the same stage. I remember when Carmelo came out, it was 2003, I believe, correct? And I was at Ohio State then. So, you know, we took a swing at him, couldn't get him, of course. And I had a chance to watch him and LeBron in the same class. It was pretty fun. So I would say for Kiyan, it's the confidence in himself to score against anyone, anytime during the game. I mean, it's not just like, I can do this. Like, I believe I can do this. There's a big difference. When you believe in your game, it permeates. You can feel it.
Sadiq White is a commitment in the class of 2025 for Syracuse. People were pretty excited about him, and it feels like there's a word that describes him best. You actually gave him one of your superlatives from the summer sessions here, and that's athleticism. Tell me how that translates into his game and what people should be excited about with him and what he could improve upon in his game before he arrives here next season.
Yeah, elite athlete, best athlete coming into college basketball, in my opinion. You know, when he was a senior last year at Myers Park High School, according to Synergy, who tracks all the high school top players with their film, he led the nation in dunks. So
wow.
he comes baseline, he'll dunk it on you right down the middle, lob catcher, a driver dunker. So anytime Sadiq White gets near the basket, now he's not just looking to finish, he's looking to dunk on you. So, and with his pop in his legs, it's explosive, but it's also, he's a quick jumper, got great hands, good shot blocker, excellent switch defender, which is very important. As we know, Coach Autry is going to play man-to-man as well as the zone, but man-to-man is going to be big defensively. So he can really switch, which I like a lot, and he's long. He has the profile of what Syracuse has been looking for in the past. Now, offensively, the jump shot needs work. He doesn't take a lot of them. He's really smart. He knows he gets his points in transition. He gets them from cutting, driving, and offensive rebounding. So this guy's going to fill a role right away. And as the jump shot improves, you know, his productivity will be even greater. And getting back to Kiyan Anthony for a minute, I talked about scoring, but I want to say this kid can play make too now. He's very good in the pick and roll, Kiyan Anthony. And I think Carmelo obviously has worked with him on the reads coming off a ball screen.
So there you go. That's Paul Biancardi from ESPN, their recruiting director. I wanted to play that clip and include the comments about Sadiq White as well. They're going to be playing together in 2025, and he reverted back to Kiyan and what kind of player he is and just their connection that they're going to have. And look, he's got another year. That's the thing. We're going to be able to watch him in his senior year. He's got the relief behind him, right? He knows where he's going. This was the week, letters of intent were signed this week. Syracuse got those official letters of intent from Sadiq White, from Luke Fennell, from Aaron Womack this week. They'll shortly get one, I'm sure, from Kiyan. To see that combination and two stars coming in, again, not that Autry hasn't brought in some good players, but it's that beacon over the hill. And now you know what kind of player he is. He learned the jab step from his dad. He's a shooter. He's got that confidence, and his game will grow over the next year. I mean, think about how he has honed his craft with Carmelo. And think about this. One of our Syracuse Sports Insiders, and being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you get to text me directly. I get to text you directly, send a message to all of our Syracuse Sports Insiders, whether that's opinion. When the Kiyan Anthony commitment happened tonight, our Syracuse Sports Insiders got it instantly right. It's your opportunity to text me directly anytime on all things Syracuse sports. And one of our Syracuse Sports Insiders said it after you stopped watching the podcast. Brent Jack says this. He said he almost committed to USC when he visited. They really sold him hard, right? So he can now go through his senior year knowing it's Syracuse, knowing where he's going, where he fits in, and just completely work on his game. As much as Anthony certainly, look, he's coming from a background, his father's a millionaire, his mother's a millionaire. He doesn't really have some of the hardships that other athletes may run into, right, when you're in that college process. But it is still stressful, right? I just had a daughter go to college, and I know what that's like when they're trying to think about where they're going to go for the next 4 years of their life, what they're going to do with the next 4 years of their life. If you're a basketball star or a kid who's just, majoring in political science, whatever the case may be, that's, man, the weight on the shoulders. Any parent that's been through knows the stress of that. So for Kiyan to have that off his shoulders and to focus on it's Syracuse, where he's going. But it's interesting. Carmelo said it on the podcast too. Wherever he visited, when he was going through the process, he commits. You kind of fall in love of your surroundings, right? And how could you not at USC? I mean, come on, you're in Los Angeles, California, sunshine, the whole deal. It's hard not to get wrapped up in it, right? But ultimately, you got to go where your heart tells you what's best for you, all things considered. And I mean, it had to be Syracuse, right? Which brings me to my fourth point. The fourth point here is relief. Now, I'm sure a lot of Syracuse fans feel that way, but no one is more relieved today than Adrian Autry and Brendan Strawn and Dan Engelstadt and Alan Griffin, the Syracuse coaching staff. Think of the blood, sweat, tears, and work they put in to getting Kiyan Anthony to commit to Syracuse, right? You've got to put in that kind of effort on any top recruit that you feel you've got an in on and is interested in you. But this was different. And let's be honest here, okay? As much as if Kiyan Anthony tonight committed to USC, I'm sure a lot of Syracuse fans wouldn't be happy about that. But at the same time, if you truly care about the kid and you care about Carmelo and what's best for him, you would be happy for him and we would root for him at USC, right? But there'd always be that nagging part of you like, man, they couldn't get that kid. And you can't get everybody. Now, you can't get every son of a former Syracuse player. I mean, think of the legacies. The Boeheims, of course, Jimmy and Buddy, Andy Routens, son of Leo Routens, Brandon Trish played at Syracuse. His uncle, Howard Trish, played here. There are a lot of family connections through the years. Chaz Owens is currently on the roster, the son of Billy Owens, right? So that legacy and everything that he's going to be walking into and the pressure of that. I mean, every day he is working out at the Carmelo K. Anthony Center. You just can't get more of an ever-presence than that, right? That's a lot of pressure. Had he gone to USC to do his own thing and maybe USC was better for him, all things considered, you've got to respect that decision if it was the case. But you don't have to think about that. In an alternate universe, if he did pick USC, it instantly becomes one of the great what-ifs that Syracuse would have, especially if he has success, if he becomes a first-round pick, if he looks like he's going to kind of carry that torch ahead. That would sting, okay? You don't get all of them. There have been athletes not only that have Syracuse, I think of Breanna Stewart, I'm thinking of Greg Paulus and Mike Hart and big time high school athletes in Central New York that went other places. Stewie went to UConn. Paulus ended up back at Syracuse, of course, but played basketball at Duke. Mike Hart went to Michigan to play football. You're just not going to get all of them to stay home, or not all the legacies to play at Syracuse. But they did this time. The relief you have to feel as that coaching staff and somewhat the fan base, the weight lifted off their shoulders. They don't have to worry about that. They will, from this day forward, never hear, man, you couldn't get that kid. How could you not get Melo's kid? Like, that would just be this blinking neon sign that would be hanging above them. No matter, look, Kiyan could go to USC, and if he went there and bomb out, maybe he's not a great player. Like, you don't want that to happen, but now all those alternative conversations don't have to take place. His fate and how good or bad he's going to be as a basketball player going forward, what kind of prospect he becomes, and how he helps elevate Syracuse basketball is just that. It's Syracuse. It had to be Syracuse. It was destiny. You had to respect the process. Go look elsewhere. Go to USC. Go to Auburn. Go to other places, right? See where your heart is, where you feel comfortable, what's best for you basketball-wise. I think there's academics in here at some point as well, right? Do that. Totally would respect that, right? But you knew it had to be Syracuse, right? There was just this feeling, this connection. I have our Syracuse Sports Insiders know. I've been telling you for months that, and this was a little bit of reporting, this was a little bit of intuition, there's a little bit of everything, right? And a couple of sources that I talked to that were dialed in and just were locked in that he was coming. But you never know what the mind of a 17-year-old will be. He could have woke up today and said, hey, you know what, Dad, I'm feeling USC. And as Lala said on the podcast, whatever makes you happy makes me happy, right? You just never know. God bless the guys and gals out there that follow recruiting on a day-to-day basis, because I have a daughter that age. Anybody that's got kids that age, they change their minds every 5 minutes, right? So as much as it seemed locked in, he could have woke up today and said, no, I'm feeling USC. But he didn't. He picked Syracuse. So the relief that comes from that is palpable. He probably felt a little breeze from the exhale, specifically from that coaching staff or from a lot of Syracuse fans, right? Who I saw, look, social media can be a little crazy these days, but I saw some people who are like, I just don't think I can handle it right now if Kiyan Anthony goes elsewhere, right? So as people said at the beginning here, and the vibes that brings to the table, that's what you get. You get a great player, you get a star, you get a legacy. What a story. If you just believe in a great story, what he can do in his time here at Syracuse. His dad was a one-and-done player. I don't know if Kiyan's going to be a one-and-done player. We'll see what kind of talent he brings to the table next year, right? But just the fact that that story will be told in Syracuse, New York, and that story will be told in a Syracuse uniform, a Hollywood scriptwriter might kind of shove this back at you. I saw today, like they want to reboot Friday Night Lights, and like, if you're in a Netflix boardroom and you're trying to pitch this, you're like, come on, man, that story's like, that's too obvious. The son of the legend goes to Syracuse and tries to follow in his father's footsteps. You know what would have been the better story? Go to USC, out of the spotlight, right? That's a show we'll make. But this story is just too good not to tell, not to chronicle, and not to play out here in Syracuse, New York. And a lot of people were certainly relieved that Kiyan felt that way as well. Now, I'm doing this blind because I wanted to pop on as soon as possible after the podcast and the announcement here. So I want to see what our Syracuse Sports Insiders have to say about this one. Now, you're not going to see their texts on the screen. I'm just going to read a few here. As noted, our Syracuse Sports Insiders, we would love for you to sign up today, my friends. All you have to do is text the word orange to 315-847-3895. You can also hit joinsubtext.com let me find that exact website for you here so I don't get that wrong. Got some people out there tonight that are watching maybe for the first time and maybe want to sign up to be a Syracuse Sports Insider for the first time. So you want to make sure you're hitting the right website there. I'll put it up on your screen here. Just give me one sec. There it is. Joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports. It's just $3.99 a month, but you could try it free for 2 weeks, by the way, becoming a Syracuse Sports Insider and get all the latest Syracuse Orange news, tidbits, inside information, breaking news. If I have it, you get it first before anybody. And just the flow of texts we get during games, I should somehow stream that just to see the wave of emotions that people have during Syracuse games. It's always great to see that from Syracuse sports fans out there. So I'm going into this blind. I haven't seen these yet. Usually I like to pop them up on the screen so you can see the text, but I didn't have a chance to sort through them beforehand. So I just want to kind of gauge the reaction from our Syracuse sports insiders. Chris says, can we buy Anthony Jr. jerseys yet? He's not a junior because he has his own name, but I get what you're saying. Antonio says, Carmelo saved basketball at Syracuse perhaps twice now. How about that? Rob says, I can remember GMAC hitting a three-pointer to beat Notre Dame. I can remember Jeremy McNeil's putback to beat Pitt. I can remember Carmelo going ballistic on Texas in the national semifinals. I vividly remember, as we all do, Hakeem Warwick blocking that shot to secure a national title. Why does it feel like I need to renew my prescription for Carmelo's son now that he is committed to Syracuse? The 2003 vibes are flowing, and that's interesting because if you come from a younger generation and you didn't experience that, have to rely on old people like me to tell you about that, now you're going to get your own Anthony experience here. Sean asked a good question. How important do you think recruiting is still these days, given the rise of the transfer portal? Does a top 10 class like Syracuse may have now even mean a whole lot? Yes, it still matters. It still matters in basketball in particular because one or two recruits can make not only a class, but a roster. It may be downgraded in football a bit, as much as Fran Brown is a noted recruiter on the football side. And I believe it somebody can fact check me if I'm wrong here, but if they don't have the most amount of commits football now in the class of 2025, I know it's top 2 or 3 in the country. It may have fluctuated recently. Recruiting still matters, because not every player you get out of the portal or recruiting is one and done and gone, or is a Kyle McCord type that's around for a season and leaves. You still need that base of players that are going to be here the traditional 4 years or 2 or 3 years, right? Not everybody is on the level of an Anthony or a Sadiq White or a Donnie Freeman, players that could be one and done type talent. So Donnie Freeman's got a ways to go here to show and fill into that talent. As he's freshman, he's still finding his way for this team, and we'll see how that goes. But the answer unequivocally is yes. It does matter. Jamal just says Syracuse 2025 basketball is certainly a lot more interesting. There's a whole lot of just people celebrating, let's go, and woo, and great news, and people just firing off texts. Yes, Michael Antonio, Syracuse will have to use a scholarship on Kiyan. Let's see. A lot of let's goes and a lot of celebration in here. A few people admitting they were wrong. They didn't think that he would be coming there. You know, Uncle Brent kept telling you, to the insiders, it was happening. So, as you can imagine, a lot of excitement from our Syracuse sports insiders. We're excited to always highlight their comments on our Syracuse live postgame shows. I do a postgame show live after every Syracuse football and basketball game, though programming note. So on Saturday, November 16th, we're doing this live Friday the 15th. So you have Syracuse basketball playing Youngstown State at 1 o'clock. The football team is playing Cal at 3 o'clock. There will not be a live postgame show after the basketball game, just FYI. We're only doing a post-game show after the football game on Saturday for our regular viewers and listeners, just so you guys know. I'll be texting our insiders during the basketball game. I will watch the basketball game, but I'll be primarily on football duty on Saturday. So just so you guys know, there will not be a live post-game show after Syracuse and Youngstown State basketball on Saturday. What a day. I think we kind of knew that Kiyan Anthony was coming to Syracuse. Think it was in the cards. It was destiny, right? But you just had to be sure. We had to sit, wait, watch the podcast, hear it come out of his mouth, watch the celebration, and just let it all kind of sink in. But it's happening. And one of the most anticipated recruits in Syracuse history now is committed, and we'll watch him go through his senior year and dream of what's to come. There's a lot of basketball to be played this year, but hard not to imagine what the next generation of an Anthony can do for Syracuse basketball. He officially commits to the Orange tonight. Thanks for hanging with us on Syracuse Sports, my friends. Again, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, on YouTube, so you get this show when it's live like this, or when we do new episodes of Syracuse Sports. We did one with Chris Carlson this week where we talked about this here commitment, which I felt was coming and did. And we tried to kind of chart the path for the rest of the season for Syracuse football. Lots of great guests that we've had on Syracuse Sports in recent weeks and months. So go back and check it out, including Paul Biancardi from the clip we played earlier, ESPN's recruiting director. So subscribing, following is the best way to know that you're getting new episodes of Syracuse Sports, so you can listen and watch when you want on demand. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, of course. Thanks to you. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, okay? We will do a live post-game show after Syracuse Cal on Saturday afternoon. So it'll be about 6 o'clock Eastern time. After that, 3 p.m. kickoff between the Orange and the Cal Bears. So a little football talk this weekend, but plenty more to come on the basketball front. Some big games upcoming for Syracuse after they play Youngstown State, and some key non-conference matchups on the way. We'll be all over it for you here. Syracuse.com. Guys, we're going to have tons of coverage. You're really going to like the coverage we have for you, and a unique angle we're bringing to you. I don't want to give it away. You're going to have to check it out on Syracuse.com. So please check out Mike Waters and his work, and Chris Carlson and Donna DeTota, of course, and everything. I have a column coming out tomorrow about this, so hope you can check that out on Syracuse.com as well. But thanks for hanging with us here on this Friday night. Thanks for watching and being a part of the Syracuse sports community. We'll talk to you next time here as the next legacy of Anthony basketball begins for Syracuse.